Hello, and welcome to the Urban Classroom. Hi, I'm Mrs. Brooks, and thank you for joining me today in the Urban Classroom. Today, we're going to be learning about President Andrew Jackson. We're going to look at his challenges and his achievements as the seventh president of the United States. This lesson has three parts. So we are going to do the first part, which is President Andrew Jackson, and then we're going to take a look at westward expansion and manifest destiny, and then the third part will be about the reform movement. So this lesson today is only about President Andrew Jackson. Let's get started. Okay. Andrew Jackson was a soldier. He fought in one of the bloodiest battles of the War of 1812. That battle was called the Battle of New Orleans. Now, some of you may remember that during the Battle of New Orleans, it was fought after the War of 1812 was over because Andrew Jackson, being a general, he did not get the information that was required so that he knew to tell his soldiers to stop fighting. The Treaty of Ghent had been signed already, but unfortunately, thousands of soldiers will lose their life, and they really didn't have to. But we know that Jackson did not get in trouble for this. It's just the communication during this time. The systems were not like the systems of communication that we have today. So he is a very important leader during the War of 1812, and he gets recognition for his fighting skills and his tactics. Now, Andrew Jackson, he was born in Tennessee. His parents didn't have a lot of money, and that's how he ended up in the military because he was looking for a way to gain more opportunities for his life in his lifetime. Andrew Jackson, he fought against Native Americans in Georgia and Florida, and he also decided that after he got out of the military, he was thinking about becoming president of the United States. Now, here's a little problem though. A lot of people don't like Andrew Jackson. They don't think that he's like really well educated and like his family didn't come from money. So highly educated politicians, they didn't really like him. They thought he was uncouth. Uncouth. That's like you not like you don't know a lot about culture and life, and your family didn't come from money. So a lot of people didn't like Andrew Jackson. His nickname, by the way, is called Old Hickory. Now, when Andrew Jackson decides he wants to run for president, the year will be 1824. Now, Andrew Jackson, he won the popular vote, but he did not win the Electoral College. The Electoral College is the way that we pick our presidents in the United States. Now, if you don't remember anything about the Electoral College, go back to Unit 5 and look at the U.S. Constitution because I explain the three branches of government and I talk about how the Electoral College works. So, anyway, when Andrew Jackson was trying to be president, he did not win the Electoral College. So, the House of Representatives, they have to select who is going to be the president. Well, John Quincy Adams was also running for president. John Quincy Adams, his father was John Adams, and John Adams was president number two. So this is the son. The son is trying to be the president. Well, the House of Representatives, they select John Quincy Adams, and Adams then selects Henry Clay to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives. As the Speaker of the House of Representatives, he is selected to be the Secretary of State. Now, here's the problem. Jackson doesn't like any of this. Jackson said that some shady deal was made between John Quincy Adams and Henry Clay, and they cheated him out of being president. And he knows that the people in the House of Representatives don't like him anyway. So he said that was wrong. Y'all cheated me out of being president, and I don't like it. I'm going to do something about it. Well, this is what Andrew Jackson claimed happened, that he was cheated. And that event in history is known as the corrupt bargain. Corrupt, that means something shady, something wrong. This was called the corrupt bargain. I don't really know if he was cheated out of the presidency or not. I don't know. But that's what Andrew Jackson said. Now, do you remember the era of good feelings? If you don't remember the era of good feeling, would you please go back to Unit 6 and take a look at the presidents when I talk about James Monroe, because the era of good feelings happened during James Monroe's presidency, and there was good trading between the North and the South. Everybody was all patriotic. They liked each other. They were making good money. And so this period of time was called the era of good feelings. Well, it's about to come to an end. It's about to be over with because Andrew Jackson saying that people cheated him out of being president of the United States. So the era of good feeling, it comes to an end. And it happened because the problems between Andrew Jackson and the federal government. So now people don't want to work together. They don't want to do business with each other. Patriotism is beginning to die. Now, President Washington's his premonitions about political party, it's coming true. It's about to come true because of this argument and the problems between Andrew Jackson and the government. Do you remember this? Something is being described here. It was a warning. It was a warning saying you better watch out for those political parties. You better watch out. There's problems between the North and South. They don't make their money the same way. You better watch out. And don't form these permanent alliances with these foreign countries talking about you're going to be their friend forever and ever and ever. Do you remember this? You should, because this is Washington's farewell address. Washington warned America about problems between political parties. And now we're about to have a major issue between political parties. So, during the era of good feeling, we only had one political party. It was called the Democratic Republicans because everybody was happy and they were working together. But now, with Andrew Jackson accusing people of ripping him off of being president, now you have people that don't want to work together. So the Democratic Republican Party will split. The people who follow Andrew Jackson and say, yeah, you right, you got cheated. They did you dirty. They ripped you off. Those people are called the Democrats. Today's Democrats would have been people like President Obama, Hillary Clinton, JFK. They would be considered the Democrats of today. But there's another group. Another group said, Andrew Jackson, you just mad. You just salty because you lost and you need to get over with. You lost, get over it. Those people will be called the Whigs. Now, the Whigs, I'm not talking about the wig you wear in your head. Look at the spelling, it's different. The Whigs, this group is a political party, and today members will be people like Donald Trump, people like Henry Clay, people like the Bush, the father and his son. It will be people like President Lincoln. So the Whigs later on in history, not right now, but later on in history, the Whigs will become the Republicans. Okay, but for now, they're just called the Whigs. So we got two different political parties. We got the Democrats who support Andrew Jackson, and then you have the Whigs, and they're telling Jackson, get over it, you lost. Okay, let's take a look at what the Democrats wanted. The Democrats, they want state rights. They want the states to have power and be able to speak up for themselves and to protect themselves from the federal government. You have Democrats, they support farmers. They want to help farmers get loans and help farmers expand their businesses. You have Democrats, and they don't like the national bank. They think it only favors the rich, and they don't think that the federal government should have a national bank. This is mostly popular in the South, and in this political party, they believe that common people, just like regular everyday people, should have the opportunity to work for the federal government. Now, this group also, they don't like protective tariffs against Britain. A tariff is like a tax, money that a country would have to pay if they want to bring items and products into the United States. You'd have to pay a tariff tax. And I'll explain that a little bit more in just a minute. The Democrats, they want to move west, but they want to do it slowly. I'm sorry, the Democrats, they want to move west, but they want to do it quickly. They don't want to move slowly. They want to get a lot of land and get it very quickly. Now, their point of view is very different from the Whigs. The Whigs want a strong federal government. They're kind of like the Federalists. Do you remember from way back with Washington and Hamilton and Jefferson, all that argument? Well, the Whigs are similar to the Federalists because they want a strong federal government. They also believe that a protective tariff is necessary to help save American businesses. They believe that the national bank is important and they need to have it. They want to move west, but they got to do it slowly. It's a lot of indigenous people are in the West, and it could cause problem if you just move into the area and try to take land and property away from indigenous people. The Whigs, they want public schools, they want transportation, they want to use more factories, they want to use machines. It's very popular in the North. Now, the Whigs will later become the Republican Party that we have today. So, Andrew Jackson, he lost the election of 1824. He had like kind of like sour grapes. He's a little bit upset about it, but he's like, that's okay. Y'all did me dirty, but all right, I'm gonna get you back. I'm gonna get you back. So he begins to campaign. He's gonna have to campaign for almost 4 years. Now, Jackson is going to do things that no other politician had done before. He started using these new campaign strategies, like holding dinners, having rallies. He got parades. He's having these public meetings. He's doing these conventions. And these strategies, they actually work. They convince a lot of people to vote for Andrew Jackson in the next election, which will be the year 1828, because elections are held every 4 years for the presidency. All right, there's a few vocabulary words that we have to talk about before I continue with Andrew Jackson. This word suffrage. Suffrage means to receive the right to vote. It's about voting. In different countries, they show different ways that they vote. If you see in the top right hand corner, you see there's a woman and her finger has a purple line going down it. Well, that's because in India, when a person voted, that was like their proof that they voted. In America, sometimes you will see like a little sticker that maybe you've seen your parents wore when they voted. It says I voted. It'll be like a little sticker or something. But the word suffrage, it means to receive the right to vote. All right. So we are going to have the expansion of democracy. More and more people are going to be able to vote when Andrew Jackson becomes president because states are changing their voting qualifications. See, before Andrew Jackson was running for president, if you were going to vote, you had to meet a few qualifications. First of all, you had to be white. If you weren't white, you can't vote. You had to be a male. You had to be a man to vote. Women, not you, not your turn. Can't vote yet. You had to be at least 21 years old or older, and you had to own property. You had to have some land. You had to qualify to be able to vote. Well, when the states started changing the qualification, they said this issue about owning property, everybody don't have property. So we need to change that, and this is going to allow more and more people to be able to vote. Well, you don't have to own property, but you do have to be white. You do have to be a man, and you do have to be 21 and older. Those were the new voters' qualifications. And because of this, you're going to have hundreds of thousands more men able to vote because of the change in the voting qualification. So Andrew Jackson is going to win the next election. He will win in the year 1828, and he will become president, and he will serve for 2 terms. And remember, a term is 4 years. So he's going to serve for 2 terms, which is a total of 8 years. And so we call this the expansion of democracy, because more white men who were 21 years old and older were able to vote during the presidential election. When Andrew Jackson is president, we call this period also the age of the common man. A common man is like an average, regular, everyday person. That's what Andrew Jackson saw himself, as an average American, just a regular, everyday person. So during the age of the common man, I'm not talking about the age like how old you are. I'm talking about the age, like the time period where common people had more opportunities. So Jackson, he wins this election in 1828, but it was because so many people were able to receive suffrage, the right to vote. More farmers received the right to vote. Laborers, frontiersmen, they all received the right to vote. They didn't need to own property, remember, but they did have to be white. They had to be 21. They had to be a man. You're going to have more and more, hundreds of thousands more men were voting, and they were voting for Jackson. And so he will win the election thanks to the common man. Here's another vocabulary word we have to know: inauguration. An inauguration is the official beginning of someone who is about to start a new job and serve in office. Okay, so it's the official beginning. And every president, starting with Jefferson, had an inaugural parade and had an inauguration to show, I am the new president of the United States, and I'm about to start my job. So that was Jefferson who set that precedent. Now remember, precedent, I'm not saying president, I'm saying precedent. It means to be the first to do something, and then other people follow you. So Jefferson was the first to have his inauguration, followed by every other president of the United States. Jackson has his inauguration, and he has an inauguration party. This is where he invited the public to come to the White House. The White House, he considered, was the people's house. And so he invited just regular, everyday people to come to the White House because he was celebrating, because he was now the new president of the United States. Well, about 20,000 people are going to show up at the White House because they want to go to the inauguration party. Here's a little problem though. A lot of people who came, they didn't have good home training. Yeah, people coming in with their muddy boots. They up there arguing over cheese, fighting each other for refreshments, for something to drink. You got dishes and glasses being broken. It's just, oh my God, just reckless. But Andrew Jackson ain't care nothing about that. He just was a common man. He was just a regular person. So he felt that regular people had a right to go to the White House and help celebrate with him. And that's what he did. Now, when Andrew Jackson is president, he kind of, Andrew Jackson, he be holding grudges. He stay mad at people. So Andrew Jackson came up with a way to make people who had a government job lose their job. You about to lose your job. You about to lose your job. He made a lot of people lose jobs because they didn't support him and they didn't like him. So he found a way to get rid of them. Now, what he's going to do is hook his friends up. He's going to hook his friends up with a government job. This was called the spoils system. It's like, look, I'm going to hook you up. Let me spoil you. Let me hook you up with this new job because you supported me. You helped me. So I'm going to help you out. Well, thanks to Andrew Jackson, just regular, everyday people will get the opportunity to work for the government. Now that could be good and it could be bad. It's good if you know what you're doing. It's good if you can help the government, but if he just hiring you because you his friend and he just like you, but you don't really know what you're doing, then you might mess things up for the government. So the spoil system was a way to get rid of people he didn't like, but it also was a way for Andrew Jackson to open the door and let just regular, everyday people, the common man, get a job working for the government. That's called the spoil system. All right, now let's talk about protective tariffs. When Jackson becomes president in 1828, he wants to make sure that America doesn't go back into debt. So he is trying to protect American jobs by imposing this tariff tax of 1828. Now, Britain, they made a lot of textile, it's cloth. You know, from the cloth, you can make dresses, you can make skirts, jackets, you can make clothes out of this textile, out of the cloth. Now, the South was making a lot of money by selling their cotton to Great Britain. And President Jackson, he's about to mess all this up. He's about to mess with the South money. See, it's after the era of good feeling. Jackson is trying to stay out of debt. He wants to impose this tariff tax to help protect American businesses. Now, let's take a look at how this tariff tax works. Okay, so how does President Jackson's protected tariff hurt the Southern economy? Well, people in the South, plantation owners, they had black people working in the fields and growing the cotton because, the South used slaves, enslaved Africans, and they worked the fields, they worked the plantation. Now, that cotton was sold to Great Britain. When Britain got the cotton, they would use their textile industry, they using factories and machines to make cloth. Now, let's say that the cloth will cost $4. That's for a roll of cloth, $4. Now, that cloth is going to be sent to America because Britain wants to sell the finished product, the finished good, wants to sell it in America. So, to sell it in America, based on this tariff that Andrew Jackson was imposing, a tariff was added to the price of the cloth, 25%, let's say. That means you're going to have to add another dollar to the price. So now instead of $4 for the roll of cloth, an American would have to pay $5 because of the tariff tax. Well, if you had the same roll of cloth made by the cotton from the South, Americans said, well, we're not going to pay that $5. We'd rather buy one that was made in America and only cost $4. Well, this protective tariff was going to make Britain lose a lot of money. And if Britain lose a lot of money, then they're not going to be willing to do business with the South. It's like, why should I buy something from something that was imported into America that costs more? I'm not going to. I'm going to save my money by buying something that was made in America. And in return, this would help save jobs in the North. This makes the South angry because they're losing business if Britain decides that they don't want to pay that extra protective tariff. So now the South is mad about losing money, losing business because they may lose Britain as a customer. Let's look at this vocabulary word because we got to understand what's going to happen next, but we got to know this word null, as in nullify, as in nullification. It means to cancel or to stop. Okay, so we're going to focus on the word nullification. It means to cancel, to stop. We also need to look at this word secede. Secede means to withdraw from a group or an organization or country. That means you don't want to be a member anymore. You want to just go do your own thing. Okay, so you're not following the instructions of a group anymore. That brings us to the nullification crisis of South Carolina. See, the people in South Carolina, they don't like that protective tariff that President Jackson is trying to implement. They said it's unfair. It's not even right. It's not even constitutional. So South Carolina, they threatened to just ignore the president and they wanted to secede from the union. They said, you're not going to be the boss of us anymore. We're not going to listen to what you're saying. And we don't want Britain to have to pay that tariff tax. That's going to mess up our money. They said we have the right to secede. Just like way back when the American Revolutionary War, when the colonists told the king that you're not the boss of us anymore, we don't have to listen to you, we don't have to respect you. That's the same thing that South Carolina was doing to President Jackson. They said they're going to secede. Now, it don't mean that like they get up and move somewhere. That's not what seceding is about. They're just saying we're not going to follow your instructions anymore. You're not going to make any laws that we have to obey. Even the vice president, this is Andrew Jackson, vice president. His name was John C. Calhoun. He was against the tariff. And he going behind Jackson back, writing little essays talking about that the states had the right to nullify a federal law. The vice president is telling his state that you don't have to listen to a federal law that you don't like. Well, they got Andrew Jackson twisted because he don't play that. We got to see what was Jackson's response to the nullification crisis. Well, Jackson says he gonna use force. He said the people in South Carolina, they got him twisted and they don't know him. He's like, you don't know me? You gonna follow my federal laws. And if you don't, I'm about to do some work with Congress and we're gonna create a bill that will let you know that we're about to use the military. We're about to use force against you. You have to obey a federal law. Now, Jackson, he wasn't playing. He was serious. He talking about he gonna go and hang somebody. He talking about he gonna hurt people that don't listen and follow his instructions. So Jackson was not playing with South Carolina. He was ready to use force against them. But fortunately, we got Henry Clay. And Henry Clay, he was able to come up with this deal and talk to President Jackson and talk to the people of South Carolina about how do we solve this problem without any violence. Henry Clay has the nickname, they call him the Great Compromiser. So he was very successful in negotiating a deal between South Carolina and Andrew Jackson to kind of lower that tariff so that the South won't lose business. And by doing this, Henry Clay actually helped America avoid a civil war because South Carolina said they were going to secede. And Andrew Jackson, he wasn't having none of that. Let's continue. Now, Andrew Jackson is going to nearly destroy the national bank. Remember, he don't like national banks. He think they only favor the rich and they don't really help the farmers. And so Jackson, he thinks that only those businesses in the Northeast are going to be able to make a lot of money, and that's unfair. It's a monopoly. They're controlling too much of the banking system. So Jackson has the money from the federal bank transferred into the state banks because he believed that the state banks would give more loans to farmers. So this actually almost destroys the national bank. It created such a serious problem in the banking system, and it was really because Andrew Jackson, he got some issues with rich people. He got some issues with having a national bank. He doesn't like them. He doesn't think they're fair. All right, for this last portion of our lesson, we're going to be talking about Andrew Jackson and the conflict that he had with Native Americans, with indigenous people. So before Andrew Jackson became president, he fought on the frontier. He fought against different indigenous tribes like the Creeks and the Seminoles. Um, Andrew Jackson, he didn't think that it was okay for white people to live with Native Americans. He thought that it's best for the two groups to be separated. And he believed that Native Americans, they needed to be removed from the eastern portion of America. She said they need to be sent somewhere else, that they can keep their traditions, they can keep their way of life, but they can't live together with white people. This is what Andrew Jackson, um, his ideas were about separation between the two groups. So there's a document that Congress was working on. It's called the Indian Removal Act. This was a way to remove all indigenous people that were still on the east side of the Mississippi River. Andrew Jackson wants this area cleared. So the federal government is promising to provide different tribes with food, with rifles, with money that will last for a year. And the Congress want these different indigenous groups to sign the treaties and move to what is called Indian Territory. Today, that will be the state of Oklahoma, which is just north of the state of Texas. So the Indian Removal Act is a document. It is a legal document, and it's telling Native Americans, you got to move. You have to leave this area and go to the west side of the Mississippi River. All right, there's a group of Native Americans, indigenous people who are called Cherokee. Now, the Cherokee, they did not like this idea about the Indian Removal Act, and they do not want to leave. Now, the Cherokee Nation, they have very fertile soil. They're in the area of where Georgia is at, the state of Georgia. They got fertile soil, they got fresh water, but the state of Georgia want that area. They want that land and want to take it away from the indigenous people. So there's a there's a leader in um, Cherokee history. His name is Sequoya. Sequoya, he creates an 86 character letters letters so that indigenous people could write down their history, write down their way of life. They could record information because the Cherokee Nation and other Native American tribes, they didn't have writing. You know, like we write essays and we write stories. Well, they didn't have that kind of communication where information was written on paper. It was transferred orally by speaking, just talking. But Sequoia, thanks to him, he invented 86 different letters, characters, so that his people could write down their language. And he helped teach it to other people. His name was Sequoia. I thought that was very interesting. Well, the Cherokee people, anyway, they decided they were not just going to allow the state of Georgia to take their land. So they started a court case. They filed a complaint against the state of Georgia, and the Cherokee people claimed that they were an independent nation and that they didn't have to follow these rules and these laws that Georgia was trying to create just to take their land. So the court case is going to appear at the U.S. Supreme Court. That's the federal level of government. Now, the Supreme Court, they was kind of confused about this court case. They said that the Cherokee Nation was not an independent nation. They said that the Cherokee Nation was domestic. It was a domestic foreign state that they had to depend upon the United States. The court is undecided. They don't really know what should be done about the Cherokee Nation's complaint. And so John Marshall, he's the Chief Justice, that's like the top judge of the Supreme Court. He is the Chief Justice, and he says that the U.S. Supreme Court didn't have the authority to make a decision about the Cherokee Nation's complaint. So it's kind of like, well, we don't really know. We don't really know what to do. We're going to have to just kind of put this to the side. Think about it. It's unresolved. They don't know. A little bit later, another court case is going to come up. It's relating to the state of Georgia again. There's this man, his name is Samuel Worcester. Now, Worcester, he's a missionary. He's a white man, he's a religious person, and his group, a few other people, they were living with Native Americans, with indigenous people, teaching them how to read, how to write. That's what missionaries do. They try to help people. Well, the state of Georgia, they passed this law saying that if you're a white person, you can't live with those indigenous people. You have to have a license, and that license has to be from the governor of the state. Well, Worcester and other people, they didn't have a license to live with those Native Americans. So he got arrested. They put him in jail. Now, some people say that the state of Georgia only put Worcester in jail because they didn't like that he was encouraging these indigenous people, Native Americans, to resist the Indian Removal Act. Worcester is telling people, you don't got to listen to that. You don't have to leave. You have a right to stay in your area. You have a right to stay on your land. The state of Georgia can't force you to move. Well, some people say that's the real reason why Worcester's got put in jail. But he's going to go to court, and the court has to make a decision about his situation. So that court case was Worcester versus Georgia. Now, with this court case of Worcester versus Georgia, the Supreme Court, they made a decision. This is again appearing before Chief Justice John Marshall. He's the head of the U.S. Supreme Court at the federal level. So Marshall, he rules that the Cherokee Nation was a domestic foreign state and that the state of Georgia did not have the right to impose laws on the Cherokee Nation. So Worcester will win his freedom. He wins his case. They have to release him. Got to let him out of jail. But he stayed like 2 years. He was in jail like 2 years waiting for his court case. But it does get overturned and he gets set free. So that kind of also helps the court case of the Cherokee Nation versus Georgia, because it's saying that the Cherokee have the right to keep their land and you cannot impose laws on them. A state could not impose laws. The state of Georgia cannot impose these laws on the Cherokee Nation. But Andrew Jackson don't care nothing about that. Andrew Jackson, he want that land, and he trying to make sure that those indigenous people give up their land. So some really bad deal was made. The Native American land, it was so fertile, it was good for growing cash crops, and the Americans want that land. So a treaty was made with a few Cherokee tribe members. Now, they weren't like the main leaders of the tribe, just a few men who made this deal with the American government and signed some paperwork saying that they are going to give up this land in exchange for like money, like supplies, some provision. And this was a really bad deal because many of the Native American people, they didn't accept this deal. They was mad about this deal. Like, who told you to do that? And nobody gave you permission to do that. It was not what the indigenous people want. Cherokees did not want to just leave their land and do this deal with America. So unfortunately, the men who uh, did this deal, they all were eventually killed by indigenous people because they didn't like that these men kind of went behind the tribe's back and made this deal that the rest of the tribe did not agree upon. So that was a really bad deal. Now, paperwork is paperwork. It's going to lead to this event called the Trail of Tears. If you take a look, you can see what is happening in this painting. Think about what is happening in this painting. And maybe some questions are coming into your mind about this painting. All right, let's wrap up with the Trail of Tears. The Trail of Tears is about just a tragic act against indigenous people. It's so tragic because Native Americans are going to be forced from their land. A lot of them, they just did not want to go. They didn't think that this was right. They didn't think the treaty was valid, but they're being forced by the military, and the military has weapons, making the people leave. Now, some of the indigenous people, they waited. They waited, and it turned into the winter time. And during the winter time, it's cold. But people were down forced because the government had given them like a year or so to move into Indian Territory, which is modern day Oklahoma. So when the Native Americans are leaving and going to the west of the Mississippi River, it's the middle of winter. It's going to be about 16,000 Cherokees that are forced into Indian Territory. They're going to have to, most of them are walking. There are some wagons, but it's about 1,200 miles that the Native Americans are having to travel to get to Indian Territory. Along the way, you're going to have about 4,000 indigenous people die. They're dying from the weather. They're dying from starvation. A lot of them are sick. They have fever. A lot of them are just exhausted. And they die from that exhaustion. So this movement, forceful movement of indigenous people to Indian Territory was called the Trail of Tears. Now, I think you can understand why it's called the Trail of Tears, because as they're traveling, it's just a lot of tears. People are hurt. Their heart is broken. They're having to leave their home. They're seeing their loved ones die. And this is something that the United States government did to indigenous people. And it's just one of the most shameful things that have happened in our history. This event was called the Trail of Tears. It is connected to the Indian Removal Act, which was the paperwork that forced Native Americans to leave the eastern portions of America and cross over the Mississippi River to the west into the state of Oklahoma, which was called Indian Territory during this time. So today we learned about the challenges and achievements of President Andrew Jackson. I want to thank you for joining me today. And I want to encourage you to continue to learn more about President Andrew Jackson. All right, so this is the urban classroom. Here we are learning about U.S. history from the 13 original English colonies to settling the western frontier after the Civil War and Reconstruction. Again, thank you for joining me today. Be sure to watch the next video lesson to learn more about U.S. history. I want you to have a great day, and why don't you just make it a great day? Bye.